Welcome to the Veronica Edwards Show, where we have fun financial conversations that everyone listening can apply to their personal and professional life. I'm your host, Veronica Edwards, CPA, and today we are back, season 5 in 2025, completely independent and sponsored by My Business Balance Virtually LLC, that provides accounting and consulting services to small businesses in Western North Carolina and all over. So I definitely want to shout out the V team as we transition to YouTube. We were previously the last 4 seasons just audio on Buzzsprout. Now we're doing both. So our new goal is to have 1,000 subscribers. We haven't gotten there yet, but we have hit almost 50, and we've had a couple of videos that have been over 1,000 downloads. So we're super excited. And I think today's show is going to continue to help us reach that goal. So let's jump into today's show. I'm super excited because we have an Asheville icon in the building. Miss Brenda Mills is a seasoned public professional with more than 33 years of experience helping to shape policy, build strategic partnerships, and advance opportunities for those often left behind. She's currently serving as the Senior Project Manager for GFT, formerly Gannett Fleming Trans Systems, where she leads the North Carolina Department of Transportation's Business Development Program for Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. She is also the owner of Mills Legacy Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to empowering communities, building public-private partnerships, and advancing inclusive economic opportunities. Through this venture, she helps organizations strategically align vision with impact. And if that wasn't enough, she's also an adjunct professor in the Masters of Public Affairs program for Western Carolina University. Wow. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my new friend, Ms. Brenda Mills. How are you?
How are you?
I am so excited. We've been talking about this for a while. Thank you so much for making the time. I know before we started, we had some technical difficulties, but you were so sweet. You're like, you got my time. And I've always appreciated that about you from the time I've met you. You are hilarious. You're caring. You're so funny. So I would love for you, because it's your first time on the show, we always ask first time guests, please share where you're from, your story that led you to this successful career.
Well, I am from the big town of Waxhaw, North Carolina. That's on the Piedmont side of North Carolina. I am born, bred, die in North Carolina. I love North Carolina. I love to travel every now and again and go different places, but North Carolina will always be my home. So I grew up in the Piedmont area, went to college at UNC Chapel Hill, go Tar Heels, and then got my master's degree at Western Carolina University. So funny story, when I got my college degree, threw that hat up in the air, and my class was 3,500 when I graduated in 1985 from USC Chapel Hill. I said, I will never, ever go back to school. But what we do realize is that sometimes a bachelor's degree is sort of like getting a high school diploma.
Yeah.
And so higher education does help. I went back to school at 47. I'm getting my age all wrong. And got my master's in 2000. I think I marched in 2010. Remember, we had a big blizzard in 2009 December, and so we had to march in 2010. Well, even between getting out of college and going, I worked for the University of North Carolina, ran their paid parking. Did that, working for transportation, and it was pretty cool. I got to manage people, which if a 20-something-year-old can manage people. But crazy story, one of the people I managed actually lives here in Western North Carolina. He's married with 5 children.
Oh my goodness.
He is grown. He used to work for Sisters of Mercy. I forgot where he works now, but he's in the medical field. And he actually saw me. My picture's in the paper for something all the time. He saw me and reached out, and it's nice when people remember you fondly, because I didn't know what I was doing. But my work has been in, Veronica, my path has not been like a straight path. I always envy people who kind of knew what they wanted to do when they were kids
Yeah.
and then they get there. But I remember sitting, I think I was working at the city by that time. And I used to say, how did my coworker become a mediocre person? Right? You ever, you ever just work with people and you're like, they just do just enough.
Yeah.
Now I know why. Right. Because you're tending to have jobs that have you doing 3 or 4 different things. But
Mm-hmm.
at any rate, I've done, I got into doing business inclusion for the county when I moved here. And then when I moved to the city because we had what we call the water disagreement. We had a water authority that went down from 2004 to 2005. And the
Oh, wow.
city hired me to run the business inclusion program for them as a manager. From that kind of trajectory and then working, with business inclusion, you work with all departments.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up under finance and then went to community economic development, which was the perfect spot for me. And then, with business inclusion, you not only deal with businesses, you deal with community, right? Because businesses are in community. And
Yep.
we're talking about minority and women businesses. Work with all the agencies in town, your Mountain Biz Works, ABT. I'm gonna give a shout out to AB Tech Small Business,
Yes.
the Carolina Small Business, Carolina's development is Carolina. I get it all screwed up.
Mm-hmm. I know what you
Yeah.
mean.
Yep. And those agencies, self help, the SBA, all of those folks here, because in Western North Carolina, we don't have your big city stuff like Charlotte and Raleigh and all those places.
Right.
We have a lot of grassroots, which I think is good in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
we have more hands-on time with people.
Mm-hmm.
Work with a lot of those folks, and then the Obama got elected, and
All
we
right, Obama.
with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or what we affectionately call ARRA. And I got asked to lead as a project manager for that. The city of Asheville got just under $13 million. We're what we call an entitlement city. So we get HUD funding, we get different types of funding. But our police officers got grants under JAG. We got some grants to do some other stuff. And it was pretty successful. We were able to really put some projects on the ground because if you remember correctly, you had to have shovel ready type projects. And that's what's always been a real good cornerstone of the city and the county, that they've done a lot of pre-work on stuff. They just didn't have the money to actually get projects done. So got through that, got to work a lot with the design community. They were mad, of course, because we have to do project ready stuff. So we're not paying for design to get done, but we did have to hire people to finish out designs and then build projects and do different things. And then that when that funding ran out, we ended up getting some more money. And then I think you remember we just did not just did. It's been about 3 or 4 years that we redid MLK Drive.
Yes. Yes.
That road was more than 70 years old. When they dug it up, we don't even know how it lasted that long. There was nothing underneath that road.
Ooh.
And if you can think about the whole year's budget for asphalt paving, we had to pay to get that road fixed. So if we had got the additional funding and other stuff. So that's a lot of the work I did. But during the time I was in community economic development, the then city manager, Gary Jackson, said, we were getting an equity officer. And he said, "Are you going to apply for the job?" And I was like, "Nope." No, y'all never had one of these before, and I'm not gonna be it, right? And then he said to me, "Well, you can apply for the job, or you can work for the idiot we hired, right?" That's what people always say about jobs, promotions, all this kind of stuff. Not that we hired an idiot, she wasn't.
Right.
So I applied, and in applying for the job, it was apparent that I didn't want the job, because
sure.
I prepare for interviews a lot different when I really, really want the job. I'm not sure this is what I need to do. But it was a really good key moment because the interviewer, they hired a company to help them hire someone, went to him and said, "Why are you hiring her? Why are you hiding her back in an office? When it's obvious she should be out in communities. She's an asset to you." And so he took me to coffee and tell me I wasn't getting a job, which I was like, yay. And
Thank you.
he said, which part of your work do you like? I'm still doing business inclusion, all that kind of stuff. I said, I like being out. Like, if I could get out of the office and not have to do so much paperwork, I think I'd be a happier person.
Yep.
And
So many people would
cool.
be.
We're revamping the neighborhood service coordinator job. I think I'd like for you to consider applying for it. And they revamped it. I was neighborhood and community engagement manager from 2017 until I took the job as equity director in 2021. I was interim.
Yes. Wow.
So, and then at that time, which you'll find hilarious, they decided to go from Microsoft to Google. I just figured they either were trying to kill me early.
At least they didn't do
run me
Apple.
out slowly.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Going from Microsoft to Google is not intuitive, right?
Yes, right.
And then, and so, neighborhood was good because there was a lot of things that, Marsha Stickford was the prior neighborhood coordinator. She really did a great job. She knew the community, knew her communities, but it was hilarious. Veronica, I go out and I don't think there was a neighborhood I went to I didn't know somebody. Because, by the time I got this job in 2017, I've been here 19 years.
Yes.
And so you've met people, people in authority. Like, I think I went to David Bailey, who used to be over the United Way. I went to his community. He lives in Redwood Forest. And, you go to a meeting, you don't know how they're going to be looking because you're like, oh, Lord, what y'all done done? So neighborhood meetings consisted of myself, a community resource officer. Sometimes you would bring in other people like transportation. Maybe they were having a problem with some type of planning thing.
That's what I was going to ask you, Brenda. Like, what does it mean? Like, how do you define inclusive economic development? Like, how are you helping the communities? Because I live in West Asheville, girl. I live 28806. So, we still gentrifying over here.
Which is the place to be there.
Yes. And I'm telling people, I'm like, there's some roads that need to be fixed, or we're always seeing potholes, or there needs to be more stuff in the community. Is that the type of stuff that you did? And that's the type of things I don't think that people realize that's happening in the city.
Right. And let's do this. So when we talk about equity is about not equal. It's not about equal. It's about Veronica needs this to thrive.
Yes.
Brenda needs something different to thrive. So the hard part is with government, it is especially hard, right? Because you're trying to you're really trying to respond to the public, but you have a civic duty that you have to respond to. But you also have reality because we live in a difficult area with the topography. We've had storms. I mean, we've been, and as bad as we've been blasted, the poor eastern side of the state has just been demolished. And so inclusiveness talks about how do I make sure that I've heard from all the voices. So part of the role, my role as neighborhood and engagement manager was to attend those neighborhood meetings. So when you getting ready to do a project, so planning's getting ready to do the comprehensive plan, I'm one of the people sitting in the room saying, they don't need that over there. This is what they need, right? And can we talk about the I-26 connector? We just want to be.
I was just going to say, I live right on the edge.
So when it gets finished and I'm 95, I can say I was talking about it,
Yes.
33 years ago.
Yes.
But when the I-26 connector, when I first heard about it, right? I've been in Asheville almost 33 years.
Yes.
There was a friend of mine said she was in high school when they started talking about it. She said
same.
And so they initially, and they've had different plans, right? They've had probably 100 different plans. Now they're starting to work on it now.
Yeah.
But the neighborhood impacted the most was Burton Street. Yes. Burton Street is one of those areas, as we know, when we talk about redlining, when we talk about moving people to the outskirts of town. Well, guess what? The outskirts of town is where they add those connectors and those streets and those highways.
Yes.
And you have all the pollution and all those stuff. So I heard a lot about it before I got into this job, maybe 10, 12 years before then. And so when I got into this job and the DLT started really working on, well, we're getting ready to start doing some stuff, right? We're getting ready to start, they're widening 26 now on my end and doing some stuff. I sat with the DLT people and they hired a planner of color.
That's wonderful.
To work with the Burton Street community to vision what would happen to them after this connector was done.
Oh,
and
that's
it
great.
was awesome. But let me tell you what was difficult, okay? Because you've had these communities in Asheville. Now, I'm just talking about Asheville. I don't know about every community in the world.
Sure.
Okay? Because you have these communities in Asheville, they've never been communicated with by government. When have they been communicated with government like that before? Never. When has anybody ever went and asked them what they wanted? So the fallacy is that you can't just go ask people what they want. You've got to teach people what to ask for. And that's what she did. She taught them about land use and the types of things that are possible. That's why you hire a professional. And she was caring. She reached out to me as soon as they brought her on board. And then what we started doing is I started attending those meetings. They met all the time. They met at the churches.
So Brenda, how do people find out about the meetings? How do you let people know? Because a lot of times people say, well, I didn't know about it. I didn't hear about it on the news.
So the meetings in Burton Street, so she literally got with the association. There's an association in Burton Street. Okay. And Burton Street Association has been pretty much active, I would say more than 25 years. But what you have in a lot of these neighborhoods, and you do have to stop me because I will ramble on. I really hope.
No, this is good, but I do want you to talk about this because
it's happening. Those neighborhoods are older people, so they don't necessarily get email. They don't necessarily do video. But the pandemic, although it was an awful time for us as the earth, right? Because we're not talking about USA. What it did is open up electronic messaging for us. So we got those people used to doing electronic meetings. The ones that could not or did not have computers or things like that, they could meet at the church or they could meet at the recreation center. Mostly neighborhood meetings met at recreation centers. And then we would put everything up on a big screen. They could get presentations from people all over the world, wherever they needed information from. So that's how we did it. And then the young lady that did the planning, she created a newsletter for them out of Constant Contact.
I love the newsletter.
Every month they got a newsletter. But guess what? You got Miss Margaret Fuller, Miss Vivian Conley, the board. They would print that out. So she made it so just that they could print it out. They'd leave some at the recreation center, leave some at the church. And they knew the people in their neighborhood didn't get out, and they just didn't get out. They're older people, whatever.
Right.
And I could run down every neighborhood. The other thing that I want people to be aware of is it used to be called the National Citizen Survey. It's now called the National Community Survey. Okay. And they do that about every 3 years. The city pays to be a part of it. We do random surveys up to 1,000 people. This last survey we did year before last, I was able to put some equitable questions in there.
Wonderful.
But basically what it does is it tells you what are the growing needs or concerns that are in your community.
Oh, I love
that. So
that.
if you go over to Hall Creek, it's bears. It's sidewalks.
Yes.
Right? If you go to Burton Street, it's the connector. But it's also they're a speedway. If you off of Haywood Road has become a business district, so there are throughway from Haywood Road going down to Patton Avenue, and people don't know how to slow down. Literally, when we went into Burton Street, and this is what neighborhood and community stuff can do. When we walk the neighborhood, I walked the neighborhood with the arborist. I walked the neighborhood with the transportation director. I bought the police were magnificent because there's
I love that.
There's a substation at the library where the police hang out. Those are the officers that come to every meeting and talk to them about crime in their neighborhood, things that are going on. They help them about putting up cameras. work with Parks and Recs on,
Mm-hmm.
program and things of that nature. Because those rec centers are old schools, right? You know this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those rec centers are old schools, so they don't have everything that they need. So,
Right.
at the end of the day, though, it is very, it's not difficult. It's more time consuming to include everybody, Veronica. But what
Sure.
people don't realize is on the back end, you spend another 10 years regretting not including everybody,
That
not
part.
making sure people understand. You
Yeah.
can't just lay a piece of paper down and say, write down your dream. Quick story, we did the Downtown Master Plan in 2009. They did not do it correctly. They gave Black people the mic, and then folk went on, right? Because they have trauma from redlining,
Yes.
from not being able to live
Sure.
successful and wealth building lives. So what we
Yes.
did is we got people from the city. I don't care if you were on a facilitator or not. If you was brown, we was using you,
I love it.
right? I got my friends in the community from all. I tried to pick someone from everybody's neighborhood. Talk to people about what it looks like to be downtown. Let's do some
Yes.
presentation. Harry Harrison was there at the time down at the YMI. He did something called That's Me. It was a pictorial thing of what it looked
Love
like,
it.
what it looked like now. Then the church was talking about their economic development. And then when the consulting company came up, people were ready to talk. We had to push them 125 people out of that room, right?
But that's
So
how it should be.
that's how it should be.
Yes. Yes. So
And we have
Brenda, but
and
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
we have got to start training you to do
Yes.
things. I am not going to be here forever, and I'm not going to
Yes.
be wanting to do this stuff forever. So sharing the wealth of what we've done and allow them to do it in the way they know how to do
Yeah.
it is important so that the legacy
Yes.
continues.
Well, that's a jewel right there. I was just going to ask you what advice you have for the next generation to lead with purpose, but it seems like they need some mentorship
Yep.
from, the generation above them, but also to seek out that mentorship. A
Yep.
lot of times, I'm sure, Brenda, a lot of people come to you naturally, like, I want you to be my mentor because you know so many people and you have so much
Yeah, but I
experience.
think they mean I want you to be my mama, and I can't be
No.
mentor. I have a mentor. I've known him 25 years.
Oh, I love that.
And never one time did he have to call me and say, when we going to lunch. I made
Right.
sure we stayed in contact. I made
Sure.
sure that I addressed my needs to him.
Hmm.
And he still checks on me. We're getting ready to have lunch in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, Brenda, that's good advice right there is that as the mentee, don't always wait on the mentor to
Well, you
initiate
the one need the
things.
help. He don't need help. I'm
Ex-
good.
Exactly. So before we go, Brenda, we cannot leave without talking about Mills legacy strategies. You've had
Okay.
this amazing career for over 30 years. What made you want to jump into entrepreneurship? You mentioned you got your master's later in life. Now you're
Mhm.
starting entrepreneurship, which I love because that's an inspiration to people that you can start a business at any time and you have so much knowledge now to share. So can you tell us about Mills legacy strategies if you're hiring people, if you're taking new clients and how we can get in contact with you?
Sure. So I'm in the process of putting this company together, as Veronica knows very clearly. When I was starting to think about retirement, I've thought about entrepreneurship off and on. I am not a risk taker. So people in the audience, you need to know that. I know that I seem like a bad mamma jamma, but
And you are, period.
I'll take more risk for you than I win for myself. But retirement is allowed me to have some leeway to be able to do that. I really struggle with a name. Mills Legacy Strategy came out of names that we just kind of put around. And I got introduced to Chat GPT sometime back. So
I tell you, that's the best gift you gave me a couple months ago.
And I was sitting in a class that was very interesting. So if anybody sees that was in that class, it was very interesting. But what happens when people are talking at you, your brain starts to go to sleep. So I said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on chat. So I went in chat and I said, here's my brand story. Here's some stuff. I don't like the names we've come up with. And I don't want these 10 words in any of my names. And I met a peer who said, I put my name in my business for legacy, right? I want it to be the Mills, because I don't have any kids. So I want the Mills name to have legacy. And so I put it in there and it came up with maybe 3 names. And I said, can you combine them all 3? And they came up with Mills Legacy Strategy.
I love it.
So
I told you as soon as you said it, I was like, that's money right there. That's money.
I'm in the process of choosing a logo. I'm going to do that today. I'm working with a business developer, Miss Adrienne Hibbert, the Creative House. We shout out to her.
Absolutely.
Cracking the whip. We're getting ready to work on a website. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do this is because the company that helped us with our reparations stock cease to harm audit, the Carter Development Group, he was like, so what you getting ready to do, right? And entrepreneurship lets you do a couple of things. It lets you be yourself.
Yes.
It lets you do things in your own time.
Yep. And
then if you want to, it helps you give back and do the things. And then it helps you make money. And I'm retired. Like you said, I'm an adjunct professor. I do that in the fall. Equity, diversity, equity, inclusion in the public sector. But I've got several, and I just want to subcontract. So I'm vgmills48@gmail.com. It will soon be Mills Legacy Strategies. As soon as we get the domain name and stuff up, I'll have a website. I'll put it out there.
Are you taking clients yet? You don't need a website to take clients from. I'm coaching you.
Oh, yeah, I will have a website.
But you don't need a website to take clients. Are you taking clients?
I can take clients now. Yeah.
We'll have all your information on YouTube below.
Yep. And then we'll update it once the website and everything is up there. We'll put the updated information up there.
So, Brenda, who would be your ideal client? Leave us with that.
Generally, it is either local government or any kind of government or any kind of entity that really wants to cross from this point to that point.
Gotcha.
And what they don't understand is they have all the tools to get there. They just have to make a few changes. So, for example, we are working with a client out in Colorado that wanted us to review all of their plans. You don't have to rewrite a whole plan.
Right.
Your equity plan is a compilation of your comprehensive plan, your multimodal plan, your communication plan. We just gave recommendations for things to add to it, consider doing different. And then and remember, it's a living document, right?
Yes. I would say it's very fluid.
Change today, in 5 years, it's going to have to look totally different.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Well, Brenda, thank you so much. I definitely want to have you back on when the website is launched and you've been rolling for a little while, when you retire for the second time, because Brenda keeps about 4 or 5 jobs. So, so thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And, your work is a legacy. You already have a legacy. And, starting MLS, as I like to call it, is going to continue to uplift communities. And we really appreciate all the hard work that you've provided to this area over 30 years. And I just want to thank everyone for listening to and watching the Veronica Edwards Show. And you can listen to prior shows still at veronicaedwards.buzzsprout.com or at balancevirtually.com. We're also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. But of course, like and subscribe to the Veronica Edwards Show page. And until next time, stay balanced and financially savvy.